Hi, my name is Megan Sharp, and this is my digital portfolio. To begin with an overview of the different components of this portfolio, there's four different parts to it. The first part is going over the technology lesson that I utilize within my classroom with my kids. The next part is looking at the technology tool project that I had them recently just do. The third part is looking at a lesson that I observed of another teacher in the building, the AP biology teacher, and the technology that she used for a pre-lab. And the last component is me looking at a different technology tool called Flipgrid. In the technology lesson that I did, it was with my freshman biology classes, and it was basically a fun way for me to introduce to them viruses and bacteria, which was a mini unit that we did after we discussed cells. I had the students work in their lab groups of 4 on this, and basically they were given very little instruction. They were given a link to a website posing a problem to them, and they had to break out of the website. So it's kind of like a breakout room. And all this was going over viruses. So it was a virus digital breakout. So that was a website that they were provided, and it brought them to this. So it says, virus breakout, can you find the vaccine in time? A virus has been released from the CDC, Center for Disease Control, and is spreading throughout LHS. Solving these puzzles will give you the key to the vaccine that can save your group from the virus. And as you can see, as I'm reading the word vaccine, you can tell there's a link. So basically on this website is a bunch, mosquitoes a link too. There are a bunch of hidden links on here. And basically in these hidden links, not only are the students learning about viruses and how they can be transmitted and how they can also be cured, but they're also in there looking for different clues. And these clues are these locks they're trying to unlock. So you have a 9-word letter lock, a date lock, a 6-letter word lock, a 5-digit lock, a 2-digit lock, and a 4-letter word lock. This is just a fun activity to get them introduced into something. So you can tell if you click on vaccine, it brings them to an article. And from here, they got the date that they needed to unlock that one. And they didn't have to unlock any of these in order. So they could have divided and conquered and be like, you try to find the 5-digit lock, you try to find the 2-digit lock, which is a really good way of getting them interacting and communicating and working on those speaking skills. This next one brought them to the definition of a vector, because a lot of the times mosquitoes are vectors and how viruses are transmitted. And then images down here were also different links as well. Overall, that introductory activity went very well with my kids. I had some kids get really into it. I had some kids that really didn't. It really just depended on the class. But overall, they really did like it, and they liked the challenge that it posed to them. Challenges that I faced with it is I had some kids that the fastest group was around 8 minutes was able to break out of it, and I had some groups they were like sitting there for 20 minutes. So the challenge I face is what to do with those kids that finished early. Kind of improvements that I can make down the line is you could tell off of that website a lot of the links were kind of really hidden. I needed to make some of them maybe a little bit more bolded or more out there where they are. Relation to WIDA, so the WIDA standards that this hit was standard 1 for social and instructional language, and standard 4 for the language of science, as well as they were learning about viruses and vectors and how they're transmitted. Relation to other classes, I would say this activity is really related to the reading and literacy class that I took over the summer, just because I really remember that teachers stressing that the students doing the talking are the ones doing the learning. And within this activity that the students did, they were constantly talking to one another, trying to figure out, can you figure out the 2-letter code lock? Can you figure it out? What does this link to? What could that be? And them just really working together as a team and working on those communication skills to try and break out of that website. So overall, it was a really fun activity. The kids really liked it. I do plan on making more The only thing is on the teacher's end is even though the breakout was really fun, it really is time consuming to make those digital breakouts. But I think the payoff in the end is really worth it for the students. The technology tool project that I did with my classes, again with my freshman biology classes, is they did a other patterns of inheritance jigsaw where they worked with a partner and they created a Prezi presentation. In these Prezis, basically what they were doing is there are 4 other patterns of inheritance that we were going over that don't follow typical Mendelian traits. So they were either researching sex-linked traits, incomplete dominance, codominance, or multiple alleles. And basically, they were responsible for teaching that small portion to their small group. And basically, what they had to research is what it was, and then they had to include pictures and be able to explain a Punnett square of their other pattern of inheritance and how it differed from a typical Mendelian trait. Looking at an example from a group that did multiple alleles. So in the beginning, so they give the definition of the multiple alleles. I really told them, so some of the groups I really did guide them on the specific examples that I wanted them to do. So this group, I told them that I really wanted them to focus on the ABO blood group. And that would also be something that would be an adjustment for ELL kids of something maybe more guiding for them to use if they needed more kind of further instruction. I told them to include pictures, the Punnett square example that they had to be able to explain, and then the difference from a typical Mendelian trait. Overall, the students seem to have a really fun time of making the Prezis. A lot of them have never used them before because I feel a lot of teachers just use Google Slides as a mode of presenting information instead of using a Prezi. The number one challenge I faced with this is students not being able to share it with one another, but after kind of just redirecting and going through and helping kids group from group, they were able to figure out. And there were some typing issues with Prezi as well because you couldn't do subscripts with the multiple alleles for the genotypes. But I just made sure that they knew that they should mention that in their presentation as they were presenting their Prezis to their groups. For an ELL, how a project like this would be different is probably pairing them up one with a student that's a little bit more stronger than they are, but also giving them more guidance on it. As you can tell from my assignment, I did not give the students a lot of guidance on what I was really looking from them. So for an ELL student, I would maybe tell them this is the example I would want you to use and kind of help them in that aspect so they know more of a direction of where they're going with it. But overall, it was a really fun activity. The kids seemed to really like it, and they liked presenting their Prezis to just their small groups in one of the innovating classrooms that we have in our building. The next portion of my digital portfolio is looking at a lesson that I observed. I observed one of our AP biology teachers. She was doing a photosynthesis lab that day in her class, but in order for her kids to start the lab, they had to watch an Edpuzzle video, which is basically she found the video on YouTube, and through Edpuzzle, you can watch the video, but she pauses it at certain points in the video to ask the students questions. The questions could be multiple choice, they could be true, false, they could be open-ended, but it's just a way to make sure that the students are watching the video and they're understanding what they're getting from the video. What I really liked about this is how you were able to stop the video so you knew that the kids were actually watching the full thing and not just skipping around to what the kids needed to watch to get the answers to the question. Because the kids had to watch this as a pre-lab to help them understand the photosynthesis lab they were doing that day in class. How I would make it better for my classes, the video seemed, it was about a 7-minute video clip. It seemed a little bit long, included information that was kind of repetitive in the lab that I observed them do. So I would have done a little bit better job of, through Edpuzzle, you can actually crop the time that you're using the video. So I would have cropped it down a little bit to just make it a little bit more effective use of time. And also just to make sure that they understood the point of the video, I would also have include a Google form where they could reflect on their learning from the video just to understand that they got the main points from it. But the nice thing that I really liked about it for an ELL student or for any student is it really helps them work on their listening skills from the video. But it's also really self-paced for them at the same time, that if it kind of stops it for them to kind of self-check off of this question, am I really understand what I'm watching? So I thought it was a really cool way to integrate that as a pre-lab. I think that's something you also could really use as sub-plans, or something if you just want for kids to watch a video to reiterate a concept that you just went over. This is a nice way just to double check that they are actually understanding the material. The last part of my digital portfolio is looking at a new technology tool called Flipgrid. And what Flipgrid is basically it's an online place where you can have discussions with students. But the cool thing about these discussions is basically the kids are videotaping themselves. So you're posing a topic to them and they're responding with a video. So I would find this very useful in my class because I feel, especially once we get into second semester, when we talk about evolution and ecology, even now in genetics, we talk about so many controversial or interesting topics. Like, for example, I know I plan on posting one of these next week and trying it out in my classes on the genetic testing that was just done on the twin babies that were born and how he edited their genes and now they're resistant to HIV. So just kind of posing a question to the kids and having them respond on it. Or if you just had a fishbowl discussion, maybe have them do a video response on what was their thoughts on it. Or you also could use this before to have kids maybe reflect on if they still have a question on something. It's just kind of a fun way to kind of get the kids more interacted in the class. And just a different way of getting them engaged. The only thing that was kind of tricky when setting this up is I had to enter the students' names. So I was kind of wondering if there would be a different or easier way to enter that. But the cool thing is when kids videotape themselves, so you can also, as you saw, I could limit the amount of time that they're given for a response, but they can also like put decorations on themselves. So I think is pretty fun for them to do because they all like the filters. But it's just an interesting, different way of sparking conversation within the classroom and getting the kids talking and interacting with one another and getting them engaged with interesting topics because there's a lot of interesting current topics in science. Okay. So that is my digital portfolio.